Hey, Kara Oosterhuis here with RealAgriculture.com. We are at day 3, the final day of FarmTech here in Edmonton, Alberta, and I have here with me Jay Whetter, who is the editor of the Canola Digest and Canola Watch.
Yep.
And he is here to give us a bit of an update on what you've seen around here at FarmTech.
Yeah, so I've got 3 things for you, Kara.
Okay.
So the first one is about canola agronomy and seeding rates. Second one is about drying grain, which I know you had a really good interview with Scott Keller. And then the last one is something a little different with this Ovi Carlson from Sweden talking about lean agriculture and trying to figure out how ways to eliminate waste.
So I'm a little intrigued. I think we should start with this Ovi Carlson.
A man called Ovi. So I just finished reading that book
Okay.
by Frederick Backman. He's a Swedish writer. So it's if you want to read a good book about a nice old Swedish gentleman,
Oh, yeah.
a man called Ovi. There you go. Anyway, so I asked if he was the man called Ovi, but he said he wasn't. But a lot of people, we're going down a rabbit hole
We
here.
are already here.
Anyway, let's get right to Ovi's point.
Okay.
So he's talking about this lean agriculture thing, and we went down a couple paths, but the one that kind of resonated with me was think about all the things in your operation that maybe wasted time, wasted money, I suppose. But one of the pictures that really resonated with me was this slide of this workshop, and it was like a pegboard for all of the tools, and he would outline where the wrench belonged and all these. And I thought, my Uncle Clint Whetter from Dan, Manitoba, had that exact same thing in his shop like 50 years ago, and I think he could have came, and it could have been a man called Clint.
Oh, my
doing
goodness.
this. But anyway,
and did you think he was crazy at the time?
No. Well, yeah, kind of. I was like, what is he doing this for? But so Ovi's point was, how much time do you waste looking for tools? And I was thinking, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Around my house, like where did so going looking everywhere for these screwdrivers.
Keys, sunglasses, where did they
Yeah,
go?
so you have this place with all your tools, and you know where they go, and then when you're done with them, you put them back, and you think of how much time you've just saved. But
That's very
anyway,
interesting. Yeah.
So that's all I got out of that hour
Well,
presentation, but I think it's
if-
probably worth something.
Yeah, no, wasting time's one thing for sure. And
Yeah.
anyways, on that note,
Yeah.
what did you learn about seeding rates?
Well, was it new stuff for me? Maybe not. But I mean, what it was the panel with the BASF talking about the invigorate system, which is the seeds per bag.
Yep.
And it's talking about like how many seeds you should have, and it's all about like canola has different seed sizes, of course. We all know that, from 4 to 7 grams, and so then what do you do with the seeding rate, and what's the cost? The heavier seed then costs more if you're targeting the same plant stand. So they've repackaged so that you get the same amount of seeds per bag, and one bag does 10 acres. It's kind of a simple system.
Yep.
But what I really liked about the whole panel that Sean was the moderator for was some of the key canola agronomy stand establishment stuff, like slow down when you're seeding. And I remember when we first started with the Canola Council, we would actually say seed at 4 miles an hour. It's like a very prescriptive.
Like
Wait a
hard and
minute.
fast rule.
Yeah, exactly. Which so now it's more like slow down so you know that you're getting really good seed placement. And I actually had a conversation with a person right after the presentation on how to test to see if your drill is seed placing consistently. And there's some really good points that they seem so, often these points are like, they're so like, yeah, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple.
Yeah.
But he said, make sure that you're looking at 3 rows like 3 rows concurrently, like not random ones, but 3 in a row, because then you're going to get a front, middle, and a back opener.
Yep.
And then he said he hammers a big spike in right to ground level. I don't know whether you can pick up my hands here, Jay, but right to ground level, and then like a foot apart. So you pound them right down. And then when you dig for your seed, you want to see whether they're level with the tops of those spikes.
Yep.
Because then you actually know, and you could put a little plank across or a string if you wanted to. And then you think, okay, that one's at 3/4 of an inch, that one's at 1.5 inches. So you can see how your drill is variable. And so if you slow down, then you're going to take away some of that variable down the row. So you're going to get a more uniform seed placement, which is so critical for canola. So some drills and in some soil conditions can do that at 7 miles an hour. Others maybe need to be at 3. So there's no hard and fast number anymore. But there's a few there's some really good tips that came out of that presentation. That it's good.
Interesting. It's almost like we just need to go back and read The Tortoise and the Hare again and remember that
slow and steady wins the race. Yeah. Sometimes that is so true, because getting the crop off to a good start
Yeah.
for canolas. And I don't mean a lot of crops, but canola in particular, because you want to make as much, get as much value out of that seed, because seed's worth a lot, and there's a lot of good stuff in that seed, and you want as many as possible to survive.
Speaking of seed and seed being worth a lot, 2019 was a year that seems to be the grain drying year, and we have heard a lot of that here at FarmTech, and it seems to be some of the hot topics.
Yeah.
I did talk to Scott Keller earlier about kind of some of his experiences here in Alberta. What were some of the things you've picked up about grain drying?
Well, the one thing that really impressed me was when Scott asked how many people in this room have a grain dryer, and half of the hands went up. I said, okay, we're in a bit of a transition mode here. And it makes sense with there's been some tough harvests in a row in this part of the country. So after 3 or 4 challenging harvests in a row, the grain dryer is starting to make a lot of sense. So people, a lot of those hands probably put up their dryers in the past 3 years. A lot of them are pretty new operations. But so I was wondering on Twitter, through @CanolaWatch, if anybody wants to try to find the thread, so with all that infrastructure now in place on the farms, if you're a neighbor and you don't have a dryer, can you just work with your neighbor who has one and use some of his or her surge capacity to dry your own grain? And some of the comments were the timing is so critical, because you don't want that really wet canola or anything sitting in your bin for very long. So you want to be able to get it in there and get it dried as soon as possible. So if that's going to be an issue, waiting for your neighbor to finish drying all of his grain, then you may want to have your own. And then the other really interesting thing, which Scott probably brought up, was the difference in price between natural gas and propane.
I know that, it's amazing.
Yeah.
You don't realize, I think he said to me 4 times the amount or something like that for propane versus natural gas.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and so the infrastructure to set up a natural gas, get the line in and everything, it's quite expensive. But I think once you have it there, it's a way cheaper to operate the dryer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been great having you back on here. Any other highlights you'd like to bring up about FarmTech?
Well, just coming to see the people and visit with people like you, Kara, and all the farmers that I find that the depth of the conversations is always really surprising, and you meet a few new farmers, and I have new article ideas and new people to talk to. So just an overall great event.
Gets the wheels moving for 2020.
It does, yeah.
Well, thanks again.
You bet, Hera. You're welcome.